Hey guys, welcome to Travel Feels. Today, you and I are gonna talk about gimbals. Gimbals. I feel like that's all people talk about these days. And don't get me wrong, they're great, but they're also a big pain in the butt. They're hard to balance, they're big, they're bulky, they're hard to take on travel films, they can malfunction. There's just a lot of headaches that come with gimbals. But if you want a gimbal, that's just something you're gonna have to deal with. A couple months ago, I bought a Movi M10 for my C300 Mark II, and Movi is kind of like the industry standard for gimbals. All the Hollywood productions and all those guys, for the most part, they use Movi gimbals. And the Movis can take a lot of weight, so they're perfect for big cameras like the C300 Mark II. It works awesome, but it's big and pricey too, so it's not gonna fit for every filmmaker and definitely not for every project. So I started doing some research into smaller gimbals that I could use on my travel films with my smaller cameras. I'm just not gonna be able to take along my big Movi M10 and the C300 Mark II on most of my travel stuff. So I wanted to see what are some options for the smaller cameras. And after all my research, I came to the conclusion that the best tool for me would be the Pilotfly H2 3-axis handheld gimbal. So the reason why I chose the Pilotfly H2 was mostly because of its payload. You can have a lot of weight on there compared to the other handheld gimbal stabilizers. It also had really good reviews, and everything I had watched, it seemed to work really well. I'm not gonna go through all the specs and tech details of the gimbal, but I'm gonna show you some footage from a few different little projects that I did with the gimbal so far. And it works really well. I was pretty surprised actually how well it works. I mean, it's not quite to the caliber of the Movi, but for what it is, it's really high quality. With the H2, you can get really nice smooth movements and much better than a Steadicam or glide cam, I would say. It has a really solid build and it balances just fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, balancing is a pain always, and that's just what you're gonna have to deal with when you go with gimbals. One thing I did notice though is that it's a bit hard to hold, especially one-handed, and any little movement you do down at the bottom gets kind of amplified at the top, so that's kind of a downside. A lot of times I think you still have to shoot kind of two-handed, which can be a little bit awkward at times. But it's nice that you can also flip it upside down and do these shots low to the ground. They're really epic and cinematic. I love doing shots like those. Another negative is that on cameras like the Sony a7R II, because it doesn't have a flip LCD screen, it's really hard to see what you're filming because the back of the gimbal covers the LCD screen for the most part. So cameras like this can be a little bit tricky, but cameras like the GH4 where you have the flip LCD screen, it works perfect. You don't need any other monitors and it just works right away. I also decided to try out the Pilotfly with the extra handles that you can buy for it. I wanted to see what's the difference. Is it a lot more stable? Is it easier to use? Can I get different shots if I'm using the handles instead of just the one-hand handle that comes with it? I'd say it's a lot easier to use and it is more stable using the handles that you can buy for it, but I don't think it's necessary. It's not absolutely needed. It does make it more like a traditional gimbal, which is kind of nice if you're used to that. And using the top handle, it is easier to get those low angle shots that I was talking about earlier. When I was testing the handles, the gimbal did have some jitter in it though. But I think that might have just been that I didn't completely properly balance it, or it might have shifted in the middle of the shoot and therefore it wasn't quite balanced anymore. But there was a little bit of this jitter, but with a little bit of warp stabilizer, I was able to fix that completely. So yeah, it's not a perfect tool, but I would say it's a really good tool, especially for travel films. I'm really trying to find a better way of doing things instead of just carrying a heavy glide cam with me, especially if I'm going on a hike or anything like that. It's just a bit of a pain to carry around a glide cam, and I also don't want to carry around a big gimbal. So this is kind of a compromise in between, and it just works really well. There's also a lot of different shots that you just can't get with something like a Steadicam or glide cam. Only gimbals can do them, so I'm really excited to take this out on some more of my travels. Even though the Pilotfly H2 isn't all that cheap, I would highly recommend it. A lot of the time it's worth putting the couple extra $100 and getting something really high quality instead of some cheap knockoff that just isn't gonna work well and it's gonna be failing on you and it's gonna be shaking and jittery. Spend the extra money and get something that's gonna work for you and be worthwhile in the long run. The Pilotfly H2 is perfect for the GH4 and I'm super excited to try it on the new GH5 when that comes out. I think it's gonna be just an ultimate combo. Having a gimbal with the GH5 and 180 frames per second slow motion and all that good stuff. If you have any questions about the gimbal, comment down below and I'll try to answer some of those. And a lot of you have been messaging me about color grading still. So I just want to remind you, there's a color grading course that I put out. I'll link it down below with a nice coupon for you if you want to learn more about my color grading process. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Enjoy the filmmaking process and go make some travel memories. See you next time.